have such sights to show you. We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron.
Hey!
Hey! What's happening, man?
Oh, nothing much.
Yeah, no, just seems like a pretty good day outside. Nice, clear skies, everything. It's a good day.
Right. I've got a big old, big red. I got the biggest red they had at
Ooh,
Sonic. A
nice.
Route 44.
Yeah, Route 44.
It's got a... Did you say route?
Yeah, like Route.
I said route, so now we're on contention on something already. How do you pronounce it?
Oh
route?
My gosh.
Route?
Yeah.
Pecan?
Here.
Pecan?
I mean, I always assumed it was Route because get your kicks on Route 66.
Ah. But what if it was route? Because there's a U.
Let's see. Well, according to my one search on Google, the word route can be pronounced as either route or route in the U.S.
Well, that's just not going to stand. We need to take sides on this immediately. We need to determine a winner. We need to hold an election. And we need to kill all of those on the opposing side.
No, I mean, it's like with the word bi-weekly. It means 2 times a week,
sure,
or every 2 weeks.
No. There's a difference between bi-weekly and semi-weekly. Bi-weekly specifically means every 2 weeks. Semi-weekly would be twice a week. That's a legitimate grammar thing, and you're asking legitimate grammar guy, Aaron, here. So, now you're Googling that. You don't trust me. Watch how I'm right. Done, produce, or occurring every 2 weeks, or twice a week. That's just wrong. That's Oxford's wrong. In the Associated Press style, specifically, bi-weekly is every 2 weeks, and anything else is semi. That's because bi means two weeks between things.
I think we're getting a little too political for this show. I think we're really going to cause a massive upset for the audience listening in.
I'm going to kill you and start a coup. And it's going to be my podcast.
Are you going to be the future Jigsaw? Start to play a game like, hello, Aaron.
All right, so
I want to play a game.
Before we get into the intro,
yeah,
what do you think Jigsaw's a McDonald's special meal would be? I need to know.
It would.
He likes to play games.
It would definitely be a McRib. I was
thinking McRib.
Yeah,
that's a good one. Okay, here's the thing. Here's my contribution to what I think is.
Okay, let's go McDonald's. If you're listening in, turn up the volume on this idea.
Okay, you guys are doing your Monopoly thing, and that has some scandals with it. Anyways, you remember the McDonald's Monopoly game or whatever. That's perfect for Jigsaw. Bring back the Monopoly game. Yeah. You want to play a little game or whatever, but it's Jigsaw themed, and it's like Jigsaw Monopoly, and it's with the McRib. And you have a 1 in 1,000 chance to be actually eating a human foot instead or something. And if you do, then you win. Man,
that definitely won't have any sort of backlash at all if it turns out. I mean, people lost their mind about a finger being in the Wendy's salad.
Sure.
Eating a whole foot burger.
Okay, well, here's the thing. With Wendy's, they advertise that it's for fresh, never frozen beef. Right? With McDonald's, you'd just be happy to learn that you're eating actual meat. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, hey, they used some real meat in this. I'm surprised. I thought it was just the McRib frozen rectangle that they...
McRib.
Have you seen the McRibs before they turn into...
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just pink rectangles pressed into the shape of what a child might think a rib looks like, and there you have it.
Okay. But yeah. So we are not going to get that deal with McDonald's for certain after talking favorably about them. But
they know what they are.
Jumping back on the bandwagon of Saw as a whole, you seem to be fairly knowledgeable a little bit about Saw.
Well, here's the thing, man, about Saw. I feel like my knowledge base is really at the same level as some of these other big titles where I know it through like parody and like pop culture. But I've never seen Saw. I just remember like Scary Movie where Dr. Phil saws his leg off or whatever.
Yeah.
Like those sorts of things, and him on a tricycle. It's just like ripe for parody, and it kind of came out, while I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like people were parodying it then. So I remember it from pop culture, but.
Mm-hmm. No, that was kind of like the same thing with me specifically, because it first came out in 2004, so I was like a little over 10 years old at that point, and it wasn't. I never heard too much about the first one, but because it was released like on a yearly basis for a while, where it was just like bam, 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 bam with the sequels. Again, you've obviously heard about it as well. Just the fact that this series is known for the first time I ever heard this word, torture porn. Basically, in the sense of like how much carnage it's known for, and how much like grisly scenes there were. And for me, again, because I always tend to I overanalyze things to the point where I'm thinking like, man, what kind of carnage is this series have? And it kind of made me a little trepidatious, because even though I do love my good slashers and stuff, I don't live for like the torture and suffering. I'm kind of like, bam, you're dead, or just kind of like one big giant kill, not just literally torturing the people in the movie. Like that stuff just gets under my skin entirely. So I avoided the series for a while until I got older, and I was like, I'm up for watching it. It was actually my wife that prompted me to watch it, because she liked the Saw series a ton. And so after watching the first one, I won't give too much detail, but it pretty much allowed me to want to continue seeing where the Saw film went from the first one. So that was overall my experience. Like, of course, I knew the parodies as well. Like, I remember the Dr. Phil thing, and I'm just like, oh, that is so funny, seeing like the YouTube clip and whatnot.
Wacky series.
I can't believe Dr. Phil's in the situation.
Wasn't it like Shaq too? Wasn't Shaq there?
Somebody. I don't know. I've actually only ever seen the first Scary Movie, and I'm kind of afraid to watch the other ones, but not for the right reasons of, oh man, it's scary. Because everyone heralds the first one as like super high, and I watched it and I was like, yeah, I should have not expected anything else from it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just all dumb comedy.
Yeah.
I shouldn't expect anything beyond that.
No, for sure. But yeah, it was like that same idea, and I knew about, the Jigsaw puppet, which I believe is Billy the Puppet, although James Wan made another film called Dead Silence that also had a puppet named Billy, so it's always been kind of up in the air on what the actual puppet's name is that you see in the film, because they don't even mention it in the film. But I've seen this film about, I think, twice. I've seen it twice recently, and so I'm really curious to see what you think about this, because this is sort of in the same ballpark, but again, it's just like we're going kind of around the classics, like, because it's a classic in itself, but it starts to develop its own tropes while keeping true to other tropes as well.
Interesting.
So yeah, and aside from that, nothing really else you've heard of aside from
Interesting. Had a double coinky dink on the way here, right? Double coincidence. Listening to the radio on the way over to our studio. I was listening. I was NPR local radio, and they were playing that Sam Sanders podcast. It's been a minute with Sam Sanders, no affiliation to National Public Radio's Sam Sanders, but he was talking to another new podcast, two hosts from a new podcast called Like a Virgin, and it's a very similar concept to this show, where they like dive into pop culture stuff that they haven't seen, that they should have already seen, and like record their reactions to it. Two hosts do the same thing, and they made a Jigsaw joke on the way here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Sam Sanders was like, well, let's play a little game, and they're like, you're really channeling Jigsaw there. And I was like, double coincidence that they would be talking about a show that has like a similar concept to ours, and then mention Jigsaw on the way here.
Very ominous foreshadowing.
Yeah, Yeah. So I feel like halfway through this movie, you're going to hit pause. I'm going to turn. You're going to be wearing a little clown mask. And I'm going to be chained to the couch. And it's not going to be kinky. I'm going to have to cut off a body part. And I'm going to have trouble choosing.
Well, we'll see what that decision comes to, and if halfway through the movie that happens. But we'll let you guys know after we get done watching James Wan's Saw.
Saw you later.
Dr. Gordon, this is your wake-up call.
And we just got back from seeing Saw.
We seesawed.
Seesaw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. So, Aaron, good hand motion there, amigo.
Yeah, everyone at home can see it.
Absolutely. So, opening thoughts before we get to the plot, Aaron?
Thoughts before the plot. Jigsaw did 9/11, confirmed by the movie.
For more clarification on people who may have never seen the movie before.
No, they don't need it.
Yeah. I mean, are you sure about that one?
Fine.
One of the characters finds a old flip phone, and on the date it says September 10th, 2001 on there. So I had known about this funny tidbit before, and I had to pause and show Aaron. And
this was just the plot before the big one. That's what I imagine Saw 2 is about. It's just he does 9/11.
Well, I can safely reassure you, it does not have any sort of mention to 9/11. Although once we get to Saw 2, I'm sure that won't stop you from finding your crackpot theories.
It happened. It's a missed opportunity, or maybe they finally decided it was faux pas. But that was the plan when they made this movie. I'm convinced.
I'm so glad you're so knowledgeable about this film.
100%. I just watched it once, and that's all the knowledge I need. My favorite line was immediately after when Lawrence found the phone, he said, "Wow, this situation we're in now is going to be the greatest American tragedy of all time." And then it cut immediately to 9/11 footage. And he was wrong again.
Oh my god.
That didn't happen.
Okay, so okay, we're just gonna move to the plot here. I need to hard transition over here.
I've got too much Big Red in my system. I'm sorry.
Big Red and Winter Lager.
I'm the most red I can be.
Oh my god.
I'm the biggest red.
The plot of Saw, so we could just keep it on track here, focuses on these two characters that wake up and they find themselves chained inside of this decrepit bathroom. And they slowly find out that they're part of this game, which has a time limit, and if they don't make a decision, bad things will happen, basically. And while this is going on, there's also another subplot going on with a detective trying to solve these murders going around with these games known... that basically the games are conducted by what is only known as the Jigsaw Killer.
Yeah.
And pretty much from there, we're just watching them try to survive in one area specifically and see if they're able to get out before time runs out. So, whenever it comes to the story, I guess since we're already doing that, I know we usually mention characters, but story-wise, I think it's a great idea having... these people being trapped in this room. It's an idea that you haven't seen too many times done before. There was one movie before this film that came out that kind of inspired Saw, I think, was Cube. I actually haven't even seen Cube yet. That's been on my hit list there currently to watch, but it has a similar premise. And you even made a joke of saying like, what's in the box?
Yeah.
Well, Saw actually got a lot of inspiration from Seven as well, as I'm sure you probably saw since you knew the reference.
Yeah, I'm glad you knew that tidbit about Cube, because I was like, is this the first escape room movie? Because that's essentially what it is. They're doing an escape room. Yeah,
and it's not the first one, but it's most definitely the most notorious one. Because as a kid, we all know about them being handed a saw and them being given the option of like, we have to cut through our feet in order to get out of this chain. And that's presented at the beginning of the film. So it's not even that major of a spoiler there, but that was the one thing everybody on the playground and school just talked about, was that one scene and how it blew their mind.
Yeah.
So
that was like one of the most parodied aspects too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cut off your feet.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what also helped it is the fact that whenever James Wan made it, this was one of his first films he made, and it was on
his first.
Yeah, okay. And it had a budget of 1.2 million, and it grew
1.2. I'm done. That's the last one.
Well, fine. You're not going to stop though, because I'm going to continue this joke,
Okay.
because it grows $103.9 million.
Okay.
So it made bank
Wow.
just for how cheaply they were able to make the film.
How much did his brother Obi's film make? Obi-Wan?
I walked right into that one.
I didn't know you were that gullible. All right, hold on.
No.
Hold on. What did you think about Joe in the movie?
I'm not even going to give you the satisfaction.
Joe Mama!
I'm not even giving you the satisfaction of that.
Lick my balls. All right.
So, story, I think it definitely played well, both through their budget and overall setting of the story, that it focuses primarily on Dr. Gordon and Adam, who are chained in this bathroom as they're trying to figure out exactly what's going on, why they're there, and how to escape overall. Again, it's very iconic. Like, you just look and it's like, man, this... It's one of those things that it's had such a big impact that if I ever go to a more downtrodden area or anything like that, I'm like, man, this reminds me of Saw.
Yeah, you're like pissing in a subway bathroom and you're like, ooh, I'm about to play a game.
yeah, that's exactly it. So whenever it comes to story, I feel like it does pretty well. Pacing sometimes does get a little bit slow. Like, there were some moments I'm like, okay, we get it. Let's move on to the next scene. More so specifically whenever we're diving into Dr. Gordon's home life, that's where I felt like it got a little bit slow. It could have had a little faster pacing, but it still wasn't too terrible. It was just something I noticed while watching it. But the moments that are really good, I mean, you're just getting caught up in it specifically. So I feel like story-wise, it does its job fairly well and everything, and makes it thoroughly enjoyable for me, just following these two characters primarily through these twisted turns, and also being on the detective side, also trying to crack the case on who exactly is the Jigsaw killer and what all's happening there. Any other thoughts about the story on your behalf, Big Red?
Yeah. I was actually impressed by the story, because I feel like the premise by itself was really easy for, like, if you tried to do that as a linear story, it could get really boring. You know, really, even if you made it super fast paced, it could still just be like, okay, like I'm watching somebody solve an escape room the whole time. So the way they braided the two storylines together, and the way they like did little flashbacks sometimes, or even where he's like, oh, I think I know who did it, and they showed some of Jigsaw's other murders. I think they did it really well and really naturally. So I was actually really impressed by just the writing in this movie in general. Even some of the dialogue, there were, a couple like corny lines or whatever. But overall, the dialogue I thought was well written too. I think Adams had some great lines.
Yeah.
He was just a great character overall.
And you know what's funny about that? You talk about like Adam having a lot of great lines and stuff like that. He wrote the screenplay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Leigh Whannell's the guy who plays Adam, and he wrote the screenplay and the story of Saw, so I felt like there's a lot of liberties for him.
Yeah, that makes sense why he was one of the best written characters, because he probably wrote for himself,
So it's funny that you pointed it out, because I had no idea he was even a writer till after I saw it for the first time. So yeah, I definitely agree that I feel like the dialogue specifically is believable. It's not... It's believable, the words they're speaking, and it feels natural for most people to speak, which I think definitely helps out a lot. So
the corniest motherfucker was Jigsaw. That's my opinion.
No,
he's very much like the Joker baby, and I'm just like, we're gonna fix the world, and everyone else is like, please, I'm literally dying. Like,
yeah. So before jumping to the characters, I do have to ask, with the Jigsaw puppet itself, you recognize the Jigsaw puppet outside, right? Did you know what role it played in the movie specifically?
Yeah, I knew he was like the bad guy that talks to him on the TV.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that there's probably someone behind it, but I didn't know beyond that.
No, understandable. Did you ever think that the Jigsaw puppet was the actual killer itself?
You know, I'd never seen anything like that. I kind of just imagined you never saw him. You know what I mean? Like, he was always behind a screen and you're in the next room and he's like, do this or whatever. So whenever he like actually tricycled out, like I knew from parodies that he was on a tricycle or something too. But like, no, I never imagined like there was an actual puppet going around killing people with a knife.
Yeah.
Do some people like think that? Is that what you thought?
Our one friend that I was talking about saying it better not be the puppet. Yeah, it was him. So he was confused.
Honestly, okay, so like I like Jigsaw. I don't think he was very scary at all, but I'm not sure that was necessarily the design. But the pig mask thing was actually pretty scary.
Oh yeah, no, it's a terrifying design for sure. So I thought that was a nice addition aside from having the puppet, which I did confirm its name is also Billy.
Okay.
I had only had confusion because of the Dead Silence also having a puppet named Billy, which was made by James Wan, so I was like, okay, let's make sure I'm not mixing up the two stuff there. So yeah, I never knew really what role it played. I focused more so on the traps than I did the killer, surprisingly, growing up. Like, the traps were always the big thing that was advertised and everything else. And whenever it comes to traps in this movie, there's really not too many. I mean, it's like they're in that one big trap that has like series of stuff going on, but you do see like other kills happen due to the other traps specifically laid out throughout the film. And were there any thoughts you had on the traps that you saw the previous victims were in whenever the detectives are discovering it?
There were some creative devices for sure. The big mouth bass device.
Oh yeah, the reverse bear trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them were like pretty like, okay, the guy that had two drills that were gonna like drill into his head or whatever. It was like whatever. But like the crawling through the barbed wire and like the finding the code with the candle and with the glass on the Legos on the floor or whatever, you know. All those were, like, I was like, Jesus, like, who sits here and comes up with that? That's fucked up.
For sure. I was surprised that there wasn't, like, much more carnage for how this film was advertised, because that was the thing I was very surprised at. Really, whenever it comes to the torture porn aspect, it's definitely, like, there, but it's not, like, screaming in your face too much.
I thought there was, I thought there was at times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, whenever he's like, oh, I might know who this guy is, and they just do like a 2-minute supercut of like people like tearing themselves up on barbed wire and stuff. Like it's there. It's not the whole movie, but there's definitely like more than one scene where I had to just like stare at my Route 66 cup. Sorry, Route 44 cup, whatever.
Yeah,
because
no,
I was like,
oh man. Well, I have some bad news for you about the sequels.
I'm sure it gets worse.
Well, I'm sorry you got a little squeamish there. Fortunately for me, it was like more tolerable, but maybe it's just because I've been so desensitized to seeing so much stuff happen in movies that blew my mind. Especially after watching the Saw series, it's kind of desensitized me.
Like, I feel like I've seen enough of that kind of stuff that like I'm at as much desensitization as I could be. I just still don't enjoy it. Even like with doctor movies or whatever, where they're going in with a scalpel, even stuff that's like not torture porn, but it's still like graphic, you know, bodily. I mean, I can't watch that. I'm like, ugh.
No, I completely understand, because I'm actually kind of the same way. Like, I don't get thrills out of it, be like, oh bro, that's sick and everything. Because like, especially one of my biggest grievances is like poking out the eyes and stuff like that. I can't handle that. However, with this film, I like it a lot, and I don't feel like it's necessary for it to go overboard like the sequels do, because I don't really like the Saw series because of all the torture porn aspect and everything. I just like the fact that it's basically people that are in a precarious situation and that they are trying to survive. And again, there's like the line that says, well, Jigsaw's technically not a murderer because he's never killed any of his victims, but he has set them up in these precarious situations to try to get out of. So I think it's more interesting in the fact that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not like defending like, I don't think Jigsaw is really a killer. It's people killing themselves.
It's not actually bad. He just put the noose around their neck and then put them on a little stool above a crowd of sharks. But he didn't kill them. The sharks did.
No, he's basically putting them in a terrible position to be killed. But it is interesting in the fact that it's not so much of I'm trying to think. It's not somebody chasing them.
Yeah,
it's just more so.
He's not hands-on. He's not there killing people. He's trying to give people, which is cool. Yeah. By a legal definition, he's still very much a murderer.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he needs to be arrested for sure.
He would be charged and convicted of murder. To be clear.
But I've always enjoyed the mystery aspect about it, and without getting too deep into the storyline. The storyline itself, as you'll see later on, it's no Shakespeare or anything like that. But I do like the world and the philosophy Jigsaw has behind himself and why he's doing this.
Yeah.
So it's not completely like sadistic, like, oh, I'm just doing it because it's fun.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's always interesting to have that.
Killing for fun.
Well, I mean, no, yeah, for sure. I'm talking about having a character that just wants to kill for fun. Period.
I know what you mean. I'm just putting on my lawyer hat.
No. Thank you for being my PR agent going on. I really appreciate it.
Just to clarify, murder is bad. It's the official stance of the Poppin the Scary horror podcast. That murder is bad.
Brought to you by Poppin the Scary. Murder is never okay.
Not even once.
not even once. So yeah, with the story, I feel like it has very well pacing and everything else, and I have more points to hit on. I'm just trying to think, like, I probably should talk a little bit about the characters before we go into the technical merits of the film shooting.
Without talking about the characters.
Yeah. So first off, focusing on probably the main two characters, we have Dr. Lawrence Gordon, played by Carrie Hughes. I hope I said his name right. Okay. He's from Princess Bride, actually.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah, he's Wesley in Princess Bride.
Yeah, so it's a main lead. So it's funny seeing him be a different character besides the very like calm, like,
it could be the same character, and just this is after his marriage with Princess Buttercup goes awry.
Well, he has that American I guess he migrates to America and then delivers an American dialect going on. And then, of course, as we mentioned previously, Leigh Whannell plays Adam. And focusing on the two characters, I feel like they're the perfect two characters for us to focus on that are trapped in a room together, because they're basically a dynamic different from one another. Dr. Gordon is very more calm, collected, analytical, trying to figure out the situation, whereas Adam's more of the impulsive, smart alecky, snarky individual who is also very panicky at the beginning. And so Dr. Gordon is trying to calm him down specifically. Yes. So I feel for having two characters you spend the majority of the time with, you want both of them to survive. You feel like even though they've been put there for a specific reason, you still care about them trying to escape. You're not rooting for them to basically lose the game that they're in. But I feel like both performances they do. I mean, we've mentioned that before. He without a doubt has the best lines in the movie by far, and has a lot of the best moments.
Yeah, he's funny because he's just like a little bit unhinged as a person. So that when he's in that scenario, he's saying funny shit.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of characters, like for instance Friday the 13th, where they have these kind of characters and you just despise them, but I never feel like it's like, oh my god, just shut up, Adam.
Because he's not, like, unlike a character like a Franklin or something, he's not just, like, telling jokes, you know what I mean, for the purpose of just, like, funny zinger or like I'm gonna be really annoying. You
Yeah.
know? He's like, I'm chained to this thing, but like the way he expresses his emotions is with funny turns of phrase. It's not like he's just like, hey doc, knock knock, why'd the chicken cross the road? Because that would have been really fucking annoying.
No, for sure. And again, having like the anchor be Dr. Gordon helps also move the story along, as he's like, look, we need to calm down and figure out how to get out of here, analyze what exactly is going on, see if there's anything we could think of. And it's never really boring. There's never a moment where I'm like, okay, I'm just bored of watching them. Like, it's exciting watching them go through everything. And whenever it comes to their development of figuring out who they are as people, since there's a lot of flashbacks that show what they were doing, who they were before they got trapped in this room, was very interesting. Again, I did mention a little bit before, I did feel that even though Dr. Gordon did need a lot of character development to kind of show the steps on who he is behind the facade we see currently before us. But there was moments like whenever he's trying to reassure his daughter at home that there's nobody in the closet, everything's okay. And then he's having to fight with Hallie and everything else. That it was going a little slow pace, like, okay, I get it. But I did watch this film like recently, about like month or two ago, like around there. So maybe it's just because I watched it too recently that got a little.
I know this, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to Nightmare on Elm Street, that it was about a year since I had seen it. So maybe that's the case. I still definitely enjoy the film, regardless of some moments where I'm like, okay, I get it. Let's move on. So I feel like these two characters are great, and it's great to spend a lot of time with them. Another two great set of characters are the detectives, two main detectives themselves that we focus on, which is Detective Tapp, played by Danny Glover. And so it was very interesting to see him in this movie. I especially love him in Lethal Weapon, so he's a super great guy. And then there's also Detective Singh, played by Ken Leung. I'm pretty much. I tried to make sure to pull up the name, like Leung.
I don't know how you pronounce it.
Yeah, but
what else is he in? Do you know?
I only know this because I watched it with my friend. I think. Did he say he was from Lost? I know there's a couple of actors from Lost.
The bug-eyed dude from the hospital.
Zep. Zep is definitely from Lost. Yeah, he's from Lost. He plays Miles.
Okay. Yep.
So
it's been a long time since I watched Lost. I watched it when it was airing on television.
I have never seen Lost before.
I couldn't give you an accurate recommendation.
I understand. That's kind of where I'm at personally.
So like there was a lot of backlash. It's a side tangent. I'll make it really quick. There was a lot of backlash after Lost aired of people, because the ending was like a little like, you know what I mean? So people were like, this show actually blows. Like all that history was for nothing. And then I think years later, some people are trying to warm up to it, because I think the overall general look back on it was like Game of Thronesy, you know what I mean? It was like great series, and then all of a sudden the ending made it just all fucking suck. And now people I think are like, well, you know, actually the ending made a little bit more sense than we gave credit for, and it was, you know, it was a pretty good series overall.
Yeah, makes me curious if Game of Thrones is also going to have the same.
I hope so, because this is my hot take, is that the like plot wise, Game of Thrones ending makes total sense, and everything that happens in the end of the movie is in character. People complain about Jaime, that's in character. People complain about Daenerys, that's in character. All of these things were set up long beforehand. It's just that the season 7 and 8 both suck hard dick because of the pacing, because a lot of the directorial decisions they made, but because they decided to cram in what should have been they were doing 10 episode seasons, and then by the end it was like 8 episodes, and they tried to cram it all together, and they already cut off so many other plot lines by that point that it was just really the main story, and it was all in icy Deathland, and it was like, you can complain about some of those decisions being bad, like the Arya decision with the Night King or whatever. You can complain about some stuff. I'm not giving them credit for everything, but everybody's actions made sense. I hate when people are like, Jaime would never do that. I'm like, that's exactly what Jaime would do. Like,
oh man,
Daenerys would never do that. know. Did you not watch her like hang slavers and burn down cities? Like, that's like all she does. Like,
Oh my God,
anyways,
man.
tangents.
No, I understand. You're very passionate about this
I
project. In
love
fact, during
Game of Thrones.
yeah, and in fact during our first episode we did where we traveled down to Texas, we actually talked about Game of Thrones specifically, and so Aaron was able to point out a lot of stuff, and I'm like, you know what, that's a fair point. I never thought about it that way. So
I think people are just mad because it was such a good series up until the end when they fucking blew it, and they did blow it, but it was not because of like plot decisions like everybody likes to point to.
Man, we just went from one thing to another, from Detective Sing to Lost to Game of Thrones. So I'm just gonna reel us back in. I feel like the two detectives working together, while I wouldn't say they are the strongest characters in the film, I feel like a lot more development went towards Dr. Gordon and Adam, which it needed to, specifically since that's kind of the main thing. I feel like the detectives are likable. Like, you do also want to see them succeed, even if they don't have like super defining characteristics about themselves. They're just likable all around. So that's about my one only other complaint is you get an idea on who the characters are. Maybe would have preferred it if they were a little bit stronger in the writing department. But aside from that, I feel like they're fine, and you get a sense of them that they're just trying to deliver justice where it needs to.
Right.
And I did enjoy watching them talk to each other and seeing both Ken and Danny Glover in this film as a whole.
Yeah. I think they did well with what we were given. I think they were just given, like, compared to the other plot line and compared to some of the other stuff that was happening, like, relatively little screen time, and they didn't really develop them much as characters beyond we're detectives looking to solve a crime, buddy cop style. Had weird couple moments like that, and then Danny Glover's tragedy that sort of inspires his second arc in the film, you know, his second inspiration. That like gives him a little character, but it's like something that happened to him. It's not like something that he, you know, like developed himself. So I don't know. I didn't think they were super memorable characters, but I also think they were fine. They weren't like bad characters. But.
No, for sure. And whenever it comes to characters, I mean, there's a lot of like background characters specifically that circle around.
The wife, the child, even a lot of people at the hospital. All those people are like, they didn't really do much for me, but they weren't the point of the story either.
Yeah, exactly. They're kind of like more places and everything like that. I do like how they do interview one of the victims who managed to escape one of the traps, and it just kind of it's nice that it's not complete carnage. It's like, okay, someone actually was able to escape.
Right. And I think that served an important, but maybe just for me, like maybe underrated or like undertone point of like, it told the characters, by Lawrence remembering that story and telling it to Adam in that circle, it told them like, he's not just going to kill us if we do this anyway. So like they had a reason, like Lawrence had a reason to follow the instructions he got on the paper and be like, oh, I need to do this.
Yeah.
They caused that tension of like, okay, if we do play the game, we probably are going to survive. It's just the game itself is horrific.
Exactly. Which I think definitely makes it a much more interesting thing as opposed to usual people that it's like, okay, I'm going to kill you no matter what. Right. So
because usually in a hostage situation, most people would assume like, okay, I'm going to follow the orders because I have a gun to my head, but probably at the end of it, you're going to die anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas this, there's been confirmation that people have survived the game. It's just they've had to go through a lot of crap to survive.
Right.
So I definitely feel like focusing on Amanda, the victim, was definitely integral to defining Jigsaw. Because really, with Jigsaw as a character, you don't really get to know who he is until the very end of the film, which I feel like is narratively appropriate. I don't feel like you need to know who it is. It's like some guy going after people, specifically one after another, and putting them in very elaborate, specific traps.
Right. You get who Jigsaw is just through his messages to the victims or whatever, because he's very explicit, like, oh, you eat Taco Bell too much, so now you have to eat 3 pounds of Taco Bell diarrhea. you know, he's like, I'm solving your problem by making you do something horrific, you know, and the world's gonna be a better place. Like, you get that right away. You're like, okay, they show you a few cases, and you're like, cool.
Yeah,
I get who Jigsaw is. I don't even know anything else.
And the little bits that you do see, whether it's through Billy the Puppet or like actually getting to see him with like the hood on and everything specifically. I felt like it was a strong design overall. specifically. I didn't feel like it was too weak. Like, I love the design of Billy the puppet with like
I think the puppet's
the eyes.
strong. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the puppet's strong. I even like the little pig thing that's used for a couple.
Oh
of
yeah,
times.
like the wearing the pig henchman going through.
His little robe outfit though, I didn't like that.
Really?
No, he seemed like it seemed really edgy. He seemed like Assassin's Creed,
Yeah.
or maybe like a boxer before his big match. He had like a big silk robe on.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that a little bit. I know
and his gloves. It just seems really edgy.
Mm-hmm. I know you had made the joke like whenever he does like unleash his blade,
He has a hidden blade. He's
like on the wrist.
He's literally Assassin, which we discussed this. It came out. The movie came out before Assassin's Creed, so it's not like they were just yoinking that. But it's literally fucking Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I feel like there has to be correlation. Like maybe one of the developers looked at Asa and they're like, I want to use that for Altair.
Cool. What if this was in a situation where the guys killed for Jesus or whatever the plot of that game was? They're in Jesus time. I'm trying to remember the plot of the first game.
I've never played an Assassin's Creed.
It's pretty. They started out pretty historical. I don't know what the fuck they're doing now, but
yeah, I think it's just historical murder spree.
Yeah, they're like, you need to kill this guy in the past so that the world is right.
Yeah, I can't really find confirmation as to whether or not it's confirmed like it was taking inspiration, but I mean it plays pretty close. But yes, it does remind me that with the cloak and everything, and you don't see him. I just thought
it was like a little cringe, but that's fine because like I ultimately think the guy behind the jigsawing is cringe. So
yeah, exactly.
So like whatever, it lined up, I guess.
Like just doing like deep reasoning behind it.
It just like V for Vendetta-ing everybody, just like literally printing out 4chan posts for people. You know?
I could definitely see that. But even if it is a little cringe, I still like the Jigsaw Killer a lot. Yeah. Like, I love hearing the voice of Jigsaw and hearing like that distorted voice as he just exclaims the traps. It's always unnerving every time. Like, it's just a classic every time you hear it in all the future films. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, those are really the main characters you get out of this movie. Again, everything else is like kind of supporting actors, which I felt like they did fine. Dr. Gordon's wife did have some deliveries that were a little wooden at
she was
beginning.
just kind of stiff as a character, but I do think pretty much every extra, like every like supporting character beyond the other two, and like maybe a few moments with the detectives, pretty much all of them were just like like whatever, it's just like they're kind of hollow performances. Honestly,
I don't know. I did like Jigsaw's performance.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
for
like
sure.
I would consider him in the main, thing. And and what's his name? Bug-eyed dude from Lost.
Dr. Singh, Detective Singh.
No, the other Lost guy.
Zepp.
Zepp. I even think Zepp's just naturally a character because he looks weird. You know, the actor like looks kind of funny, and he always plays those roles where he's like kind of off. You know?
Yeah, so I feel like
those were memorable. But yeah, I think most every other character that had a line in there, I was just like, eh.
No, I could definitely see that. One thing I really want to hit home and talk about, which is one of the cringiest but best things about this film, is the editing.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many moments that I feel like are genuinely good. Like whenever there's a flashback with Adam trying to go through the apartment and it's like dark and everything. So he's using the flash. Like I felt like that was a very strongly shot scene. So there's stuff like that. But of course, the fast-paced editing, the screaming and the loud thrashing noise, it's very iconic for Saw, but at a lot of times it's like, man, this is just goofy.
Sometimes it works really well, but yeah, there's a couple moments where it's just funny, and I don't think you want that in a horror movie whenever like the intense part is like makes the audience laugh.
Yeah, for sure. I felt like some of it was appropriate, with the reverse bear trap scene with Amanda being trapped in it.
Right.
I felt like whenever it is showing her trying to struggle, for pacing sake, I feel like it works better in everything else. And even seeing her like manic look she has, which I'll tack this on there. I felt like even though Amanda didn't get to do much, because again she's just there as the sole purpose of being a survivor, I felt like she did fine, especially just showing her grief she's dealing with through the trap. But the one scene that I told you is my favorite scene in the entire movie is a car chase scene that literally looks like they were just parked, sitting there waggling the wheel back and forth as it's zooming forward with like tires squealing, going.
You know what it reminded me of? Have you seen that GIF of? I guess it's a short video of Nicolas Cage driving, and and it's just rapid cuts of him, like the various shots of him in an intense car scene, just like cut back to back together. It's like a super cut of Nicolas Cage.
Oh
driving.
my
He's just
god!
like,
Oh my god! I have to pull this up here.
It's really funny.
Specifically,
Nicolas Cage driving it, it'll probably pop right up.
Let me see if I can try to find this.
Yeah, that.
Is that it?
Yeah, it's funnier with sound if you find a sound version, but that's.
I'll see if I can try to add it on the YouTube video.
Like,
You're going down! Whoa! Oh no!
whoever edited that YouTube video is who edited that car chase in this movie.
Yeah.
They were just like, I've done this before.
Like, it was one of those things where it was like pretty cringy and just goofy all around, but it's just so perfect that I love that it's in the film. Mm-hmm. Like, I laugh every single time and seeing the driver's expressions.
It's the timing too, because I don't remember what happened just before that, but it's like some moment with Lawrence on just hanging up the phone after the like he thinks his kids are dead, like his wife and kid is dead, and he's like distraught. And he's like, and then it's like, so it's this like dramatic moment in like a sad way, and then immediately it's just like a car chase.
It's so goofy. Yeah, it's like the cutting definitely screams Saw. Like, I've never seen editing done like this specifically. Maybe like a couple of times, but this is like just screams Saw style sort of editing, which I like, but it can also be pretty off-putting. So people that probably don't like that, I understand why.
I think it worked really well. Like, when you mentioned the Amanda scene, even in the scene where like the guy with the glass on the floor and the candle, and like whenever it showed those moments, because it like showed the agony of those moments compressed and like enhanced by speeding it up that way. But the car chase thing just reminded me of cheesy car chase movies and other moments like that where it's like that didn't work. But that took some risks, and I appreciate that.
No, I definitely appreciate it. I'd rather them like try something new as opposed to play it safe, like maybe people won't like it, which again I think it worked out favorably for James Wan. And
do you remember the transition though where the car itself moved?
Oh my god, that was so much work but so goofy. So there's this transition in Saw where specifically it's showing like a detective Tap, I believe, and it shows him, and then all of a sudden you see this car driving like across.
Imagine like green screened over it. You know what I mean? Just like the hood of the car drives across the shot.
And not only that, but like you think like, okay, like it's just going to be kind of like a wipe. It's like a car wipe almost, except for the fact past the windshield you still see a close-up of Danny Glover's face through the windshield. Like, they had to edit it, and so because it's a transition from his face to him taking Dr. Gordon from the station back home, since they drove him to the station for questioning, it was like so much effort put into that transition that it's just so bizarre. But again, it's like, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's already here. I want a copy of it. I'm going to appreciate that scene every time it pops up.
Yeah, Coale and I were making fun of it. Like somebody spent like 14 hours on it, and they go to watch the final cut, and they're like, I don't know if this works. And the guy that worked on it just like, fuck, leave it in. I spent so much time on this. I'm like, fine, jeez, Christ, fine, it stays.
Oh God, I'm so glad you committed to that performance.
Imagine him like kicking a trash can.
I hope.
God damn it!
I hope that is exactly what happened. Like, footage surfaces and it's exactly delivered the way Aaron spoke it. Oh, that'd be good. There's actually some interesting points I can ask about this film as opposed to other films specifically, but whenever it comes to the traps themselves, there's actually been a hot debate about the traps specifically since it focuses on it and how much BS there is about the traps. Because specifically, we discuss about how it's important that they actually see like a light at the end of the tunnel, like we can survive this trap specifically. But there's been a lot of controversy on it to where there's even a series of videos talking about like how they should have escaped the trap and everything else specifically. So I wasn't sure if you had any initial thoughts about the specific main trap or the side traps that were around there.
I guess I didn't put that much thought into the side traps. The main trap, the only thing to me is that it seemed pretty, like, on retrospect, it's kind of convoluted in parts. Like, there's, like, a lot of it relies on the fact that Lawrence didn't just and shoot and kill Adam in the beginning. Like so much of it, even though that's exactly what he was told to do, Jigsaw's like, kill Adam and you win, and he's just like, okay. Like he didn't find a way to just get the gun and shoot him immediately. Like every part of that depends on that not happening. And then there's other parts of the puzzle that I won't spoil yet, but where it's just okay, like you would have had to know that this happened in a specific sequence, that it was like, it is like an escape room, but I was like, you could have easily just not done that clue in that order, and that would have been messed up.
No, exactly. Yeah, that was the joke you made. You're like, oh, it's an escape room. Cool. So yeah, I think that definitely you're right. It does dive more into spoilers, dissecting the traps themselves, but there's been like a lot of like stuff like that. Even watching it with my group of friends like about a couple of months ago, they had issues with like some of the ways they went about doing the trap, which for me never really bothered me too terribly much, because I feel like it's just them in the adrenaline moment, like you're not thinking straight. But then there's also the fact of like, well, I think they just tried to establish that there's no way to do that. But again, that's just me just trying to give it a pass, basically, where it doesn't bother me that much. Because there are some traps in the sequels that's like, what even is this? What am I looking at?
Because I feel like there was a lot of inspiration that went into this. But yeah, if you're under the pressure to make this magic happen again, I can imagine you come up with some dumber traps.
No, exactly. Yeah,
the ones that were left on the cutting room floor, and this one they're like, well, let's give it a go.
Yeah, just have baked ideas that are like, we need to trap out by Thursday.
Yeah.
So is there any other pros or cons about Saw that you felt like you needed to mention before we jump over to the final verdict and the spoiler territory?
I'll just say, like, overall, I am impressed by the creativity of this film. I guess that's probably what carried the franchise so much. However many sequels they've made of it.
So far, aside from this one, they made I believe 9 of them, because they're up to like Saw 9 technically, although the 9th one is just a different story in the same universe.
Interesting.
No, for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I think that it's definitely a really solid film overall, probably more so than I expected going in. Torture porn definitely is an aspect of it, and I kind of thought that's what carried the series, but yeah, no, I think that the way that it was written was actually, yeah, I was impressed by it. So that's my biggest pro, I think, taking away from it. Cons, yeah, I think we've talked about a few of them, but yeah. I think some of the characters are hollow. There's some goofy editing moments, and I don't really count this as a con. I'll put it as something in the middle. It's a con to me personally. Some of the like torture porn aspect, I don't like. I do feel like some of it was lingered on a little more, but I don't think it was unnecessary, because I think it achieved the objective of the film. It's just not like an objective that I would necessarily seek out. So.
Yeah, that'll definitely be a factor on how soon we watch the sequels, because that'll, if anything, it might be hard. I don't know if it's like better to do one giant Band-Aid and watch them all back to back, like one giant Band-Aid,
like a Lord of the Rings marathon. We'll do it all in a weekend.
Except like towards the end of the series, you're like, Yep, we're ready to watch another damn movie.
That's how I feel at the end of a Lord of the Rings marathon too. So it's okay. How many more hours of Peter Jackson's glorious cinematographic universe do I have to sit through? I have to pee.
Yeah, and I think you hit a lot of points at home before I mention any other pros and cons, which I think I kind of said everything. But do you feel like out of all the films we've watched thus far in the series, this has been the most intense, like the one you're like, I can't watch?
Overall, as a package, probably. I think there are more intense moments in some of the other films we've watched, but this one had a lot of them, and they were concentrated, and I do think it was more of the point of this film.
No, for sure. Like, they were just trying to do something original and kind of shocking, which, again, it worked. A lot of people talked about it and everything else.
And I didn't think it was shocking just in the point of, like, sometimes a horror movie will just be like, watch me cleave open this person's ribcage, and we're going to focus on it for, like, 30 seconds, and it's going to be disgusting. I think the shock was definitely the point of this film, but not so much so that it's just like, look at this, look at it, look at it. You know, it would go between shocking scenes, and like it all made sense.
Yeah.
Like I said, for the objective of the movie, like here's this horrible thing he did, here's this horrible thing he did. But yeah, I didn't think they like overly exploited any of the stunts.
How difficult do you think this would be, since again you're not used to kind of like the world of horror, for an average person who may not be used to horror to watch this? How difficult do you think it'd be?
If you're not like a person that watches horror movies, and you've ever had a moment in a film where you're like, I don't want to watch another film like that, I wouldn't recommend this series. If you've ever had a moment in a film you're like, that's disgusting, and like it ruined my day, and I would prefer not to watch a film like that again, it's probably at that level. But if you're just like, you know, kind of like my level, where you're like, that's uncomfortable to look at, and I don't want to look at that, but it's not going to ruin the whole experience for you, then yeah, go for it.
No, I think it's definitely like one, because I keep mentioning my friend Randy. He actually was a little trepidatious about watching this film, because again, he's kind of like you in the fact that he doesn't really like the torture porn aspect of the traps. But I was telling him, like, look, you just got to give this movie a chance. I think you would really like it, because again, it's not so much the point, again, the shock. It definitely plays a factor into it, but it's more about the mystery and them trying to figure out how to get out of this situation. And I definitely, that's what really impressed me the most whenever I first watched it, because I was kind of bracing for impact, which is probably why I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. You know, because I was expecting the absolute worst, goriest moments. And there is gore in this movie, but they could have had way more and showed way more explicitly.
Yeah, with the content they had, they definitely could have gotten a lot worse. But
no, for sure. They kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre some scenes where they'll just cut away and just imply what's going on. So I definitely think that's something I actually kind of prefer, because I don't live for the effects of the gore and everything. Like, it's fine. I can definitely appreciate it in some kills that I do see in other movies. I'm like, well, that's crazy they did that, but I'm not like a fiend. I just like the suspense, the rush, and everything else behind it.
No, I 100% agree. I think I get why some movies do that, because this is a body genre, horror is, right? And art is intended to explicit a reaction, and so if that's your objective with your piece of art that you're creating with your movie, then yeah, I mean, sure, show the horrific stuff if that's. But I'm with you where I prefer when they cut away, because I think that's actually a more storytelling strength, because we as the viewer look away, right? And so does the camera, right? Whenever humans see something horrific in real life, we tend to look away, and so right before something bad happens, I think it's actually more human for the camera to do
absolutely. And that's kind of like one of my disappointments, I guess, about the Saw series, is that they choose, like, again, they're giving what the audiences want. They love the fact that these traps were like sick and twisted, and so they just continue to deliver on that and just amp up everything more and more. And for me, I was like, that, because you're talking about like looking away at scenes now. Later on in the movie franchise, there was moments where I'm with my wife, and I'm like, let's watch one of the sequels with our dinner, and I can't even. I have to eat during the dialogue scenes because I just get so queasy.
Yeah.
So that's Not to spoil too much, but that's what's in store.
I feel like as we get into sequels, I'll talk about this more too. But I feel like that's one of the common themes running in any sequel of any movie is that they have people that are writing the sequel have a need to like do it bigger and better, no matter what it is. And in horror, it probably usually applies to or make it gorier and more aggressive. And I don't think that's always a good thing.
No, it's not a good thing, but it was definitely profitable for them for how fast they were churning out and everything. And it definitely, even if I don't really love that, like I said, I really like the Saw series more for the universe and the ideology behind it. Just the fact that it focuses on Jigsaw and why he's doing this. Right. I can't deny that the traps and the torture porn aspect is definitely the biggest selling aspect and the identity of Saw as a whole, as opposed to this mystery figuring out stuff.
That's fair.
So I think I said everything without getting too much into spoilers there, but Aaron, what would you rate James Wan's Saw?
I will give it a 7.
Man, that's actually higher than what I was expecting.
Yeah, well, if I had, like, factored in my personal distaste for, like, the torture porn aspect, it'd probably be landing at, like, a 5. This is one of the few, usually when I'm rating these, like, my personal enjoyment's higher than the actual rating I give it. I think my personal enjoyment's actually was pretty lower than the 7 that I'm giving it. But I think overall as a movie, I think it took a lot of risks and it paid off. I think the storytelling was actually pretty complicated. I loved how as they were finding clues in this room, right? Also, the plot was like giving you clues about the characters. It was like both had that mystery, both the inside the room and outside the room sort of plot. Yeah. That it sort of fed you breadcrumbs. So I think it was overall well written. It was well shot, and it was even well edited. Despite some of these really goofy times where they tried to get a little too intense. But I give a lot of points for creativity, and I've never seen a movie that quite attempted what they attempted here, and I see how it spun off, 8 more movies. But.
Yeah. No, like I said, I can understand, like, some people, because even, like, film critics didn't really care for this movie too much. They kind of thrashed it. I think it has, like, a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. But obviously the fans love it a ton, specifically. And out of all the Saw films, this one is my favorite. There's a lot of people that like the sequel better, but for me, I'm kind of like, I like this one better. Again, sorry for like light spoilers on thoughts, but I don't even know when we'll watch Saw 2. Sometime in the near future, more than likely. But
these days.
I can understand why people don't like it. So whenever you mentioned that you had to kind of look away from the scenes, I was kind of expecting kind of the lower range. But no, I'm kind of there with you in the rating. For me, I have to give it a super solid 8. I really like a lot of the aspects, and even though there are some aspects that do slow down, that are a bit hokey and everything, there's so many good factors about it specifically, and just overall atmosphere and character performances. Like, it's pretty much up there for like favorite horror movies. It's like, sits up there. Like, even if I like some other movies a little bit better, I mean, it's like a high solid 8 for me. Like, just definitively. And it's like almost verging on the 9, but I think there's just other films that kind of outbeat it slightly. But again, it's all pretty conglomerated close together for me. So definite recommendations from both of us, but definitely do be wary that even if I have mentioned that it's not quite as intense as I thought, Aaron was still a little bit squeamish, which is understandable. For sure.
There are parts designed to make you squeam, and it does that. So.
But it's a good, like, I would say, dipping your toe in the water if, again, you are kind of like at Aaron's level of horror tolerance. Obviously, if you are very squeamish, like you just can't handle like the sight of blood and everything, probably not the best film but I mean, it's still like, you can try giving it a watch, but definitely don't feel like you need to power through it specifically. Like, you'll know pretty quickly if this film is going to be something you'll like or not pretty quickly.
Like, I've gotten a read on a lot of like my close friends and like partners I've had or have, and like yeah, there are definitely people where I'm like, I wouldn't show them this movie because they wouldn't be able to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that you have to kind of know your strengths. Just know that it's not as extreme as the sequels are. So if you've ever seen anything like that, like they just jump the shark whenever it comes to it. So yeah, I still definitely say try to give this a watch, but again, do be wary about that stuff. So yeah, so spoilers, I always give you the privilege of getting to tear open this segment here. So Aaron, is there any spoilers in particular that you want to further discuss?
Okay, well, if we're diving right in, it wasn't the bug-eyed dude from Lost.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, they gave you a double twister-rooney, really.
Mm-hmm. No, that was one of the things that shocked me completely because I had no idea really who the Jigsaw killer was. Yeah. So again, I was kind of going along with everyone else thinking like, okay, it's Zep that put him in the room and everything, right? Not exactly.
Right. That was one of those things where it was like, I guess the mystery for me watching it, I thought the mystery of who the killer was like present in the beginning up until you saw kind of his eye in the closet scene or whatever, whenever he was like being the boogeyman in his daughter's room. And I was like, okay, maybe it's just not that big of a deal who the killer is, you know? Like, they're not gonna reveal it. Like, yeah. Because, like, I was like, okay. And then by the end, they were just openly showing him as the bad guy. And so I was like, interesting. I guess it's just him, and they're either gonna catch him or they're not at the end. And once he died, I was like, oh, okay. Well, there must be, like, a different Jigsaw killer for the sequels then, I guess. And then I was right. They showed you who it was right there. It was, you know, brain cancer McGee. Who was dead on the floor the whole time. With that part kind of, like, was like, okay, you think if they were in this room for, like, however many hours they were, like, and that guy had to be there the whole time. You think they would notice him breathing or something?
Yeah.
Like...
And they actually point out exactly what they do in the future films on why.
Really?
Yeah, they go back to that room specifically to point out stuff. Which you're right. It maybe it's something they're trying to tie up like loose ends on stuff, but they specifically do mention on the fact why Dr. Gordon and Adam do not notice John Kramer breathing on the ground, but. Speaking for real, I know I said that the car chase scene is like one of my favorite shots in the film, but I think my ultimate favorite, like for real, no joke shot is the fact that whenever Adam is realizing that Zep was just another player in the game trying to survive, and it shows John Kramer lifting up from the pool of blood and pulling that back, just that whole thing specifically, and mentioning about the key in the bathtub, and then the music is just amping up specifically, and you see Adam give that blood-curdling scream as John's walking out of the room, and he slams the door saying "Game over" with that green light and the smoke. Like it could definitely be seen as corny, but for me, I'm like, ooh, that just
I think it's pretty good. It was a good ending. The one thing I will say is, like, again, that key in the bathtub was another thing that was like, that's just another thing that you just completely relied on going down the drain and him not like waking up and going, oh, here's the key.
Yeah.
See you later.
So that was always my issue too. That was my issue because, you know, Jigsaw is trying to set up these traps for people to escape, except for the fact that you basically took something, and they do actually talk about that also in future films. So that's kind of the interesting thing, that it's stuff that you think that they would just ignore and try to walk past, but no, like the writers go back and specifically mention, oh yeah, this is actually what happened and why.
They read all the Twitter commentary and they're just actually
which I appreciate, you know, a little bit. It's kind of interesting just to see somebody take the criticism. It's like what they did with the Star Wars films, but much, much better, the new ones. Which is a whole kit caboodle that we're not going to open here on this podcast.
I will go. That could be another fucking... I actually thought, and this is just... you feel free to steal this series idea, guys. Guys at home. I thought it would be really funny if I made a podcast called... We're Still Mad, and every week we just talk about Star Wars Episode 9 for years, just because we're still mad about it.
I'm with you there. Out of all,
I think it'd be a really easy podcast to make too, because I think since it would be such a joke podcast, we do like 5, maybe 10-minute segments. But I just get on a Discord call with some of my fellow super Star Wars fans, and we just fucking rant. And I could just cut up like I'm sure that would easily be like a 2-hour call.
No.
And I could just cut it up into like fucking 10 episodes right there and just release.
I think you should do that. I would be there to deliver some ammo because that is
and then like every few weeks we could have like a guest or something and like cut their takes in, and
even taking the film outside of the other like films there, like it is one of the worst films I've seen. Like I cannot stand it. Yeah. But that's a whole other kick-a-boodle. Like I said, we're just gonna puts a Tupperware lid on that and store it towards the back of the fridge there.
Please do, because I already have more things I want to say. But
no, for sure. But if you ever do this podcast idea, please call me up. I would love.
The only reason I hadn't done it, I had this idea like 4 months ago, and I was like, I'm not going to do it. It's because I would have to watch the movie again. And that's the point. I was like, I have to watch that piece of shit again.
If you want. And this is like the offer I'm putting out. Kayla has seen every Star Wars movie except the last one because I've been dreading watching it.
That's what I did with Olivia. I made her watch every single one except for the new trilogy. I stopped her at the new trilogy because I was like, I don't even want to get you started.
I feel like you could watch. Man, we're already here. You know what? Yeah. We'll do it live. Yeah. I showed my wife Kayla episodes 7 and 8 because I feel like even though they're not the great, I mean it's like the Game of Thrones thing, right? Yeah. Like it's good-ish at the beginning.
7 and 8 are like the season 7 of Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? It's like it's got good moments.
Yeah, for sure. It's not my favorite in the series, but I can appreciate some aspects about it. Right. But I stopped there, and fortunately she hasn't been like eager because she loves 7 and 8. She actually loves it a ton.
They're not bad movies overall. They do things that like as a Star Wars fan infuriates me, but like in a vacuum, they're not bad movies. They're Disney movies, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, hit me up, fam, if you ever want to watch it and make it.
I kind of want to now that we're talking about it again.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm gonna fast car driving editing too.
And we're back.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot of like stuff that they go back and they try to fix and address stuff specifically. So I can appreciate that. But it also has a Kingdom Hearts effect later on in the movies. Right. But again, I'm trying to stay away from talking about it as a whole, but at least give you a roadmap of what lies ahead on our journey here.
Kingdom Hearts lore.
That's a whole other thing that, again, I'm not even going to show you the can for that. I'm just going to put it back on the shelf.
Yeah, it's a big pantry.
Yeah.
Don't
Thank
open
you.
Those cans. There's a lot of worms in there. What is this, a bait shop? Come on.
But aside from that, I still feel like the ending is super strong on this film. And even whenever the credits start rolling, you still hear Adam screams and cries for help specifically. And I feel like just the overall, like the climax of the movie and how it speeds up, because that's whenever that car chase does occur. I mean, everything's amped up to 11 specifically, like you said. Dr. Gordon hears like the gunshots, and so
he thinks that his wife and kids died, and then he's freaking out.
And so then he's trying to like complete the game in front of them. So then like you understand why he cuts off his foot, because one of the biggest gripes I hear about the trap specifically is the fact why they didn't cut through the locks as opposed to the thick chains there specifically.
The locks seem kind of thick too.
That's what I think too. So like
it's are designed to not be like that easy to
get through. Like the idea I get overall is that the saw is only strong enough to cut through flesh and bone. Right. That's about the only specific thing.
Like Adam breaks his saw trying to cut through it. Like and that's not because the chain's thicker, it's because he's putting pressure on this flimsy, rusty ass saw.
Yeah, and so that was my thing too about it, but that's always a lot of like agreements like they really should have cut through the lock. And maybe like I wish they would have maybe shown that they tried to cut through the lock, so that way they're like, man, this lock's thick, like I can't cut through it. Like then that would like cut it down. And they've even like suggested cutting the big pipe, which I'm like, the pipe has to be way stronger.
Yeah,
because everyone's
the
like,
whole
oh,
pipe.
yeah, exactly. And so because people were like, oh, it's probably weaker than chain. I'm like, no, it's probably just dirty because the whole place is just filthy in there. I know one of your favorite scenes was whenever Dr. Gordon is telling them to dig through, because I feel like the film is pretty self-aware of stuff, specifically like whenever Adam does plunge his arm into the feces-ridden toilet there, specifically like, why aren't you checking the water tank?
Yeah, because it's like follow your heart, and then there's a little bloody heart on the tank itself, not on the pot part. And he decides to dig through the pot part first. But sure, whatever, your stressful situation. But I still would like check the tank. That seems like a natural. People know you can hide things in tanks at this point in American history, and like also just. It's a compartment. Like, why would you dig through the shit first? Adam, I think, headcanon, Adam's just a shit fetishist. He's like, yeah.
He does have, he does mention about covering yourself in peanut butter with a 15-hugger gangbang, is it?
Yeah. I feel like that's not just a line you come up with. No. That's experience.
No.
He lives in a sort of like a shithole, as he put it. He never in a real shithole.
No, he definitely has the best lines in the movie as a whole. And no, he's super great. And again, even whenever he does like find a tank lid, pulls it up and he's like, guess I should have checked there first. Like he's like self-aware of it. And so I think because the film is like really strongly written between the two characters, it's really enjoyable overall. And in fact, one thing I love about the dynamic, and this probably picks up from me watching it so many times, is at the beginning, Adam's the panicked one and just panicking, trying to figure out what to do, and Dr. Gordon's trying to calm him down. But then as soon as time's running out, Dr. Gordon is in shock about his family being dead, and he starts losing it. Adam's like, no, calm down. It's okay. We can do this. And so it's like flipped. Now Dr. Gordon's freaking out, and now Adam has to try to pull him back in specifically. And I do love Adam's reaction to Dr. Gordon cutting his foot off. He's like, oh, God. Yeah. Oh. And so I do feel there's a lot of good callbacks, I feel like, between the two. Like whenever Dr. Gordon comes up with the idea of like, oh, the blood is poisoned. If I shove the cigarette there and have him smoke it and make him look like he died, I win the game. Like, I feel like it's done so well and believable. Just the fact that Adam would be over the top acting like he was dying. To where it's completely comedic and then being shocked. But then they have a callback to where they do it again, except this time they do a way better job ensuring that it looks real, in the fact that Dr. Gordon shot Adam. And then whenever Zepp comes in to try to kill Dr. Gordon because time ran out, that they then get the jump on him specifically. No, okay. You just like zone out like, So I was like, did I just like...
No, I'm just remembering it all. Yeah, no.
Yeah. But again, I've seen this movie multiple times, so that also plays into factor about it. But yeah, and I know we talked about this briefly, but I do love the fact that the Jigsaw killer isn't who you think it is. Because again, you think like, okay, it's Zepp doing all this stuff, and specifically...
and that's like a little too neat of a bow, and then they just like are like, well, it's too neat of a bow because that wasn't the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
It was
and
actually
so
this guy that never had a line in the movie.
Yeah, it's one of Dr. Gordon's cancer patients.
Right. It's the guy that he was just like, this patient, and then Zepp was like, he has a name and he's pretty cool actually. And he's like, whatever. This motherfucker right here, this stupid dead guy, you're gonna die soon. You're gonna die. And that kind of makes sense as why he was like, well, I'm gonna make him die, and then I'm gonna make Zepp die because he was really nice to me. And then I'm gonna...
Yeah, the Zepp thing doesn't really make too much sense, because, like, Jigsaw's whole belief is the fact that he's going after people who don't appreciate their life, who do stuff and kind of throw stuff away, like good stuff they have going on.
And Zepp, the only thing we knew about him is that he appreciated life. That he was like, that guy's a real person and you should treat him like such, was like the only line he had in the movie.
Yeah, it doesn't really give any notice for what he did bad. It's just, even listening back to the tape, it's just like,
I've poisoned your blood. You need to kill Dr. Gordon's wife and kid in order to win the game. If Dr. Gordon loses,
like what does Zepp do? Poor guy.
No, and so I feel like whenever it comes to the philosophy, I feel like it is based, but then there's just moments like that
It
where
is
it's like,
based.
like based in his beliefs.
Right,
Not
right.
Yeah, that's what I mean. In the fact that like, okay, he's going after Dr. Gordon because basically he's cheating on his wife
Yeah.
with one of the students, and then he's throwing Adam into the mix specifically because he makes a living off of exposing other people.
Right.
So I feel like whenever it comes to that, it's believable. However, sometimes there's just situations that's like, okay, why is he part of the trap? And the other thing that was mind-blowing is whenever Detective Tap and Detective Singh find out, okay, turns out the Jigsaw's killer's lair is here,
Yeah.
and Detective Singh is chasing Jigsaw after Detective Tap has his throat sliced out by the Altair blade.
Yeah.
And then he's going down that hallway and it's like trips through, which again, maybe that's just more of the escape route. Like, okay, if I get chased, I need to go down this hallway and it'll just straight up kill him. So I can understand that. But that is also another thing. Like, wait, I thought your whole belief is...
And that was, like, kind of fucked up, too, because, like, not saying police officers have never just gone somewhere without a warrant before, but also, like, you'd tell somebody where you were going. Like,
Yeah.
You would, even if you didn't, like, go to get a warrant, you'd be like, all right, Singh and I are going to go check out a guy that's killed multiple people.
Yeah.
Just by ourselves. We're not going to use radio in or anything. Like, Jesus, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
and it does, because of that whole thing, it does add to another thing that I think adds to a little bit of the campiness of the movie. It's the fact that Detective Tap just snaps after seeing a Detective Singh, like, get his head exploded, which is, like, true. It's traumatic and everything, but it's almost done comedic, like, I got you now.
Yeah.
I got you now.
like talking to the picture of him.
It reminds me...
I love you, Dr. Detective.
Have you ever seen the movie Get Out?
Yeah.
Okay, it reminds me of that one scene of the one guy capturing the main character. He's like, I got you.
Yeah. That way at the end, like the brother.
I think it's I don't know if it's a brother specifically, but it's the one that runs.
Oh, the grandpa?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what reminded me of, just like delivery of like, I got you.
Good movie. I love that movie.
No, it's a good movie. It's a dang good movie. Maybe we'll have to watch it for the podcast in the futures. But aside from that, I feel like Danny Glover also does a good job of just being like straight up Batman. He even has the gravelly voice and everything, and he's like vigilante living in a dirty apartment across from Dr. Gordon watching him.
Like that part I believe. Now that he's like disgraced detective, like chasing the villain into his lair and dying or whatever, like I believe that. And I also appreciate it because it could have been a very dumb movie if like he was victorious there, right? But because of conventional movie tropes, we were like, yes, good guy going to win.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the gunshot goes off and it kills him and not bug-eyed lost man.
Yeah,
Zap.
really, the good guys don't really win in this movie specifically. Like, the wife and kid are safe. Dr. Gordon is last seen crawling out of the room bleeding.
Probably doesn't make it.
And so then it's like Jigsaw's the one kind of like,
Game over.
you know, gets to have the final laugh basically in the film. So it's definitely interesting, and I do kind of like that aspect that it's not completely, because usually in horror films you've noticed already it's like the final girl or something along those lines, specifically of they're the ones that are victorious. But this one, there is a little bit of victory, but also not so much. It's more of a victory for Jigsaw as a whole. But just that whole ideology and the fact that he's going after people, kind of like, again, like the killers go after the horny, like drug addicted.
There's a moralistic thread here. I did appreciate that, like the moralistic thread, unlike a lot of the slashers we've been watching, wasn't just like women who have sex, because that was getting a little tired in my mind. It's just like, you are a woman who has sex bad. You know, it's just again, it's, you know. But at least, but there were still some, like, not that I really need to nitpick the ethics of a serial killer, but I was like, is really being drug addicted that bad? Like, especially like if the opioids thing that they injected the other guy with, it was like an opioid overdose. If that was supposed to be like her addiction too, like that she has to cut through this guy, it's like opioid people that are addicted to opioids are because like a doctor prescribed them to somebody. It's not like they're bad people. It's like they got fucked over by the medical system.
Yeah, I think.
So it's like I don't. Anyway.
Yeah, I think what boiled down to more so is the fact that people that do drugs. I mean, obviously it is unhealthy.
Right.
Poppin the Scary says, "Do not do drugs, not
Poppin
even
the
once."
Scary says, "Do all the drugs, put them on your system right now." It's really fucking cool
and
what you do.
yeah, and so I think like Jigsaw using the opioid to do that specifically, just to kind of make him move. I think it's just for the trap itself,
Right,
but
that's
it
fair.
is kind
like
of
I said, it wasn't necessarily being like you are a bad
but
person.
it is.
It was like we're solving your addiction in a
Yeah,
dramatic way.
whenever you have a moral like this, there's definitely a thin paper line kind of going
like,
through.
I get it, because like the point is they're using like a pretty fucking terrible method to fix the world, but like thinking that they're right, you know what I mean? It's not supposed to, like, the movie doesn't pretend to espouse that this guy is like doing good. He just thinks he is, and that's the conflict of the killer. But
For sure.
so I do, but yeah, at least I do appreciate that it wasn't just like women bad.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a nice change of pace from the usual like horror tropes that is in the world of horror specifically. So I think that definitely also played to another strength itself, and it gives itself a unique identity specifically. And while again you don't really get to see the real Jigsaw killer, you get who he is without having to even see who it actually is. And I can appreciate that aspect a lot. And yeah, I mean, really with spoilers, I feel like we were able to tip through a lot of stuff. Again, there's just the traps specifically that are there. Again, I feel like it's safe. Although, again, it does play into the how difficult is it actually. Like, I know a lot of people have complained about other traps, like the lock one being like, okay, how could you do that? Like going up and checking every single lock within the amount of time of that candle.
That one seemed a
little rough. And then people complained about the razor edge one being like, why did he run through it? He had hours to get through.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
You can't
And he just bulldozes through there specifically. Like if it was like 5 minutes, then yeah, sure. But it never really bothers me too much. Again, it's just more of the idea behind it. But again, that's just only a taste of what is to come within the Saw series itself. But yeah, I really like the overall development you go through. Again, kind of finding out that, Dr. Gordon isn't quite as altruistic or just perfect as he kind of tries to be that composed doctor and everything. It's like you're finding out he is having an affair, but also at the same time they do this really well where you don't think he's an absolute scumbag of a human being, because you do show that he does love his daughter, and even if he's not having the happiest marriage, he does decide to break it off. Like, okay, this isn't right, we can't keep doing this. So there is like a little bit of remorse with him. And even though Adam is just kind of like, again, not really going for he's like, it seems like a stand-up guy in general, but you also believe his situation. Like he's in a ratty apartment and just needs to make a living, and this is a quick way to make a lot of money. So it's like that, as opposed to coming across some people that are irredeemable and you're like, dude, I don't think you should even have a chance to escape this trap. One other aspect, this is one of the things that I think is done well, again, with the editing department, is I know we talked about Adam going through the apartment with the flash photography and stuff. I love the reveal of the pig costume, like going and attacking them. I felt like that was very well done. There's just a lot of moments like that I'm like, man, that was done really well. And of course other moments that are kind of just straight up goofy. But yeah, Saw overall for me is definitely a fun film. And while I can't say I'm watching it like recently, probably because I just watched it back to back recently, it's definitely one I'll repeat. And out of all the other Saw films, I will probably watch the most, because that's a whole other kick-a-boodle we can get to at a future time specifically. But yeah, was there any other spoilers you needed to tap on or anything like that specifically?
I don't think so.
All
tapped out.
Good one. Yeah, so we're pretty much going to wrap up the episode right here. And of course, as always, I'm going to give a teaser as to what is to come next. So,
Tease me.
yeah. Yes, I
Tease
will.
me, Daddy.
Yes, I will. I will tease you,
Okay.
Aaron. Okay.
Yeah.
With the months starting to get towards like the winter season and everything else, I feel like we need
Krampus.
to. Actually, that would have been a good one, but no, it's not Krampus. We're basically going to be taking a long trip up towards the mountainside to a ski resort specifically. And we're actually going to be going back to the year, I believe, 1980 it was. Have any other inklings on what's happening so far?
It's Jack Nicholson's Hatchet Jamboree.
It is Jack Nicholson's Hatchet Jamboree. Because next time we're going to be heading up to the Overlook Hotel when we're popping the scary with Stephen King's and Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
There's John.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @CoalkirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.